What I was thinking the other day, we obviously don't know each other, right? And we met briefly last time to talk about the podcast and the nature of the interview.
Yep.
And then before we joined the conversation, the call dropped. And then I had to rejoin the session. And it was like literally 2 minutes after we got connected, after the time that we wanted to connect, right?
Yeah.
And then you go, that's what I noticed. Like, actually, that is what stuck with me. And then you said, I'm 2 minutes late. And I said, no, the call dropped. You were on time. And you said, no, I think I'm 2 minutes late.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, like you're very young, obviously. And that was such powerful statement that you could have easily brushed it off and not even mention it. And you took the responsibility for whatever the technical glitch was. You took responsibility for it, and it was so powerful.
Thank you.
And of course, the thing that I want to ask you is that, have you always been like this, to take accountability and responsibility? Was it the second nature to you, or is this something that you consciously developed?
I think that when you grow up in an environment, it shapes who you are. And I think sometimes we model the things that our caregivers are and do. And sometimes we run in the opposite direction.
Okay.
So growing up, for me, there was very little accountability, very little responsibility, very little personal responsibility. And there was self-improvement was non-existent. Yeah. And that I'm grateful that you saw that, because at the end of the day, I was late just now. I think that we all run in the opposite direction of whatever causes us pain. And I think lack of accountability and responsibility caused me a lot of pain. I know that it did. When we grow up, we all grow up in a different environment. Some of us grow up with a silver spoon and things are given to us, and then we usually lack work ethic, or maybe we're a little entitled, or spoiled brat syndrome is what I call it. And then some of us grow up in a really atrocious environment that's very, very difficult, and you have to kind of develop skills to survive. And I think that that's really what it is whatever you needed to do to survive when you were younger is usually how you're wired. And now I coach people constantly. That's my number one thing. And I actually calculated this recently because Kevin interviewed me on our podcast about, he opened it with, you've done 7,000 hours of one-on-one coaching. And we crunched the numbers because it's all on my calendar. But it's been a lot, and all different cultures, all different backgrounds. And the reason I'm saying this is because I think it's really important, especially nowadays in the 21st century, to hear from people that are actually in the trenches. And I work with people 6 days a week, every week. Been mentoring for 10 years, coaching for 8. The only difference between mentoring and coaching is I finally got paid for it. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And and in some ways before that, I was always sort of guiding, and I was always the goals and dreams guy. But anyone watching or listening, whatever you had to do to survive growing up, that probably wired you a certain way. And for those of you who grew up in a very abundant environment with a lot of love, a lot of wealth, a lot of healthy stuff, you actually have an interesting challenge too, which is, do you have grit and work ethic, and do you have drive? Because usually, not always, but drive usually comes from massive pain.
What's that? Well, do you think that we are born with a sense of self-worth, or this is something that we earn in life?
I think we're born with a sense of self-worth, and then it is either increased or decreased based on our upbringing.
Okay.
And then what I've found is so if someone were to sit me down and say, what are the two most important factors of a human being? And I'm an engineer, so everything is engineered. How do I engineer someone for success? How do I engineer someone for fulfillment? How do I engineer my life in a way that's going to work? How do I re-engineer so that I'm not late to my next meeting? Like I was to this one. But everything's by design for me. So I used to be on autopilot a little bit, but in hindsight, as I've coached more people, the more I've realized that everything's by design. I've never like done things and then not thought about why I'm doing them. I'm very existential. And so the two things that I've tried to figure out since I was born, I was trying to figure out life. I've always been very curious to figure out why is it set up this way, especially growing up. I'll be brief about this, but essentially I grew up in an environment, small town, small mind. And it was a lot, people were running amok. It was in the 90s. So like the economy in the US was booming, .com bubble. And it was a lot of what I would call now in hindsight, adult children with money.
Okay.
And it was very, very alarmingly, a lot of partying, a lot of that stuff. And snowmobiles and ski trips and boats. And I mean, it was just, yeah, running amok, I think is a good way to describe it. There wasn't a lot of professionalism. And it's almost like when the .com bubble happened, very uneducated individuals also had tons of money. It was interesting. It's an interesting time, particularly in the US. It's the largest economy by far. And if you study the global economics of the 90s, the economy was basically doubling every 2.5 years, every 3 years. It's kind of wild, the expansion back then.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, it's happening kind of again, but not to the same extent. .com bubble was wild, the internet. But anyways, the reason I'm talking about this is because I've come to understand over 36 years, I know you said I'm young, but 36 years of studying myself, others in the world, and paying really close attention. Self-belief and self-worth are the two most important things. Self-belief, and they're both known as self-efficacy if you study the psychology of this. So self-efficacy, you can look this up. Self-efficacy externally is what I would call self-belief. That's something that I had a lot of. I felt like I could achieve externally within reason pretty much whatever I wanted. It felt easy.
How old were you?
Go ahead.
Like, how old were you when you were thinking that?
So
it was always like that?
So a lot of this is reflecting in hindsight, but I always wondered to myself. So some people are what you'd call gifted. And when you're a kid, you don't really know that you're gifted. So you just wonder why you're better than other people at stuff. Why does everything come so easy to me? Like I got straight A's in high school, but I didn't have to try that hard. That kind of thing. And then there's other people who have the opposite, which is why is everyone better than me at everything? Why is everything such a struggle for me? Why is school so hard for me? Mm-hmm. And I was never that guy. And again, you're not really allowed to call yourself gifted, but I'm leaning into courage and just trying to be honest, because one of the problems with the world today is people that are extremely gifted don't ever say it, and they're not allowed to say it. So they make you think that you can achieve what they've achieved, when in reality, not all of us are going to beat LeBron James at basketball. I mean,
why?
Yeah. What'd you say?
Why aren't you allowed to say it?
Socially, it comes off very arrogant. Yeah, you're not really allowed to talk about you. Like if I say how amazing and gifted my beautiful girlfriend Emilia is, that's seen as humble and not a brag. But when you talk about yourself, people get very weird about that. But my only desire is to be sincere and serve here. So to get back to self-belief and self-worth, self-belief, self-efficacy externally, I always had that very high. I felt very capable of reverse engineering finish lines and then going and achieving them. What I didn't have a lot of is self-worth. Self-worth is internal self-efficacy. It's your belief in your own value. And so the way I describe it is, do you believe that how much do you believe 0 to 10 that you can build the castle? Given enough time, enough effort, you can build the castle. That's self-belief. Self-worth is how much do you believe you deserve to live in the castle, and will you protect and honor it by boundaries? Or are you going to invite people in to spill beer on the carpets and ruin the tapestries and all that stuff? And I think that that's a good metaphor for all of us. So the 4 archetypes. I know that you are an actress, so you have studied this. So victim, villain, hero, and guide. So the victim is low self-belief, low self-worth. The villain is inflated self-worth, think you're better than everyone else, even though you didn't earn any of it. And then the hero is someone who's a martyr who just wants to save everybody through tons of self-belief, but doesn't really understand their real value. And then the guide is Harry Potter when he breaks the wand and throws it away, and he's finally good enough as he is. And that's a journey you have to go on. And I started off as a victim for sure, and then probably became a villain for a short time. I think a villain is very nihilistic, and the villain is the archetype of like, I'm going to get mine. I was hurt, so now I'm going to hurt others, that kind of thing. And I had a very short stout of that. And then I went into hero, which is just full martyrdom. Change the world, save everybody, help everyone achieve their goals, regardless of myself. Let everyone come in and spill beer on the carpets, literally and figuratively. And then eventually in your 30s, you realize that that's going to be terrible, and you cannot sustain that.
Not for myself.
And then eventually you realize, okay, I have to serve the world, but sustainably. And yeah. I can't just, I got to be careful and protect the castle. I can't invite the Trojan horses in.
Very interesting. You know what reminds me of? That reminds me of the saying that the one without boundaries and healthy boundaries is like a city without walls, right? Where people can come in, invade, and take everything.
100%.
But so, there is this notion of boundaries that I don't think that we all were born with, especially in our schools. They don't really teach us healthy boundaries, what boundaries are to begin with. And then you come off and you start pleasing everybody in order to fit in, or, all the stuff that we do when we are children. And then we grow up, we create we come up with our winning formulas, which are, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the winning formula analogy, that based on what happens to us, we will create some sort of a self-defense or self-protection mechanism in our head that either sets us to succeed, either sets us to, God forbid, like a life of bad choices or whatever that is. It is only to protect us.
Yes.
And then we don't learn what boundaries are, what to do, what not to do. What was your journey and what was your process of learning how to create healthy boundaries without ruining the relationships that you have and still nourishing them, encouraging new relationships, and nurturing actually your relationships, sticking to your healthy boundaries?
So this is where we have to have a discussion about kind of the whole human condition for a quick second, just to provide context before I can answer that question. People always ask, and I'm so grateful because at the beginning it was crickets. I'm grateful that you're even asking the question. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you. Because in the beginning no one cared, right? But ultimately, I have to. People always say, "Well, how do you this?" And it depends. It depends on the person. It depends on the context. Depends on their goals. So the way that I see it, and it's all a formula for me. I'll close my eyes to do this, but the higher your self-efficacy is externally, the higher your self-belief is. We'll call it self-belief. The larger your goals will be. The larger your goals will be, the higher standards you have to operate with in the present, and the more you have to grow in order to achieve those goals. Unless you're completely full of shit, in which case you can just lie and cheat and steal, which unfortunately a lot of people choose that. But if you want to be fulfilled, don't take that road. Okay, so the higher your self-belief, the higher your goals. The higher your goals, the higher your standards have to be in the present. And that produces this necessity of boundaries.
Okay.
Because a good metaphor, Michael Phelps won 23 gold medals, and he's the most decorated Olympian in history. And he talked about how for 6 years straight, 5 years straight, he didn't take a day off. So no holidays, no birthday, none of that stuff. He talked later on about what that did to his mental health. I totally understand. But at the end of the day, the higher you aim in life, the more boundaries you're going to have to set in order to achieve them. And so it really depends. So you asked me that question, and the first answer is I've had to set tremendous boundaries, and I pretty much, because my goals are so high, I have to be more discerning. So the way I see it is, and I coach a lot of different individuals, 27 people right now. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I want you to know I'm not just talking. When someone comes to me, the higher their goal is, the more they have to be discerning. The more discerning you have. So if you want to be a famous actress, an A-lister, you're going to have to be way more discerning with what you do and don't do, because there's hundreds of thousands of other people trying to also do that.
Correct.
And so for me, if I want to be very, very, very successful on the highest statistical end, I have to be more discerning. So it's the more you focus in on. So for me, all I do is coach, train, and podcast 6 days a week, front facing. And then I take Sundays off, but not really off. I do back office work and that kind of thing. And so I would say to people, well, I haven't taken a full day off in 10 years. And I used to hide that, because I was on with a woman named Deborah once on a podcast. She said, "Oh my God, Alan, that's so bad for you." And I said, "No, Deborah, that's bad for you." Because the truth of the matter is I actually don't want to take a day off. I'm one of those weirdo achiever people that genuinely is significantly fulfilled by his body of work and by the work he does in the world. And it doesn't mean it's all easy. It doesn't mean it's all pretty. It just means that I'm not really here to hang out. That's never been me. A lot of people are here to hang out. They love hanging out. Okay. Some people are working to live. Other people are living to work. Some people are in between.
Right.
And we all know type A, type B, all that stuff. Okay. So all of this depends. And to go back to your original question of the boundary thing, the size of the boundaries that you must create and sustain depend on how high you're aiming. Oprah cannot answer every text message. And she knows that. And she had to learn that, and she had to lose many, many friends. Oh, you're too good for us now, and all that. Listen, honestly, the more sought after you are, the more the boundaries you have to create. And I'm sure you know some famous people. I spent some time in LA. I knew some famous people too. And whenever everyone wants something from you, you have to be very careful with what you allow in. So for example, I'm here to podcast, but you and I will have a relationship, but you're not going to like come over for dinner, and vice versa. Right. And people get very offended by that, because when you're in high school, you're all buddy. You all sleep over each other's houses. You all are super close. And so I always use the metaphor of like a Beyonce, just because people know her, not because I know her. But like Beyonce, the world loves Beyonce. A lot of people don't, but a lot of people do. But like her friends from Destiny's Child probably secretly hate her. And I don't know the answer to that, but like there is no rising without upsetting the people that you have to set boundaries with. And that's the unfortunate truth about achievement.
Yeah, it's a byproduct. It's a byproduct of moving.
Because they project onto you that you think you're better than them, when in reality, you actually are going to burn to the ground if you allow everyone into your city or castle or whatever the metaphor is. Right?
Yes, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. You are the CEO, founder, and the co-host of Next Level University, and you have over almost like around 2,000 episodes already, and over like 1 million listeners. Congratulations. That is a huge success in such a short amount of time. Obviously, we get to that. Your secret.
Well, 8 years. I don't know if you'd say short. Yeah, it's been 8 years, so I don't know how short the amount of time.
Very young.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
But I want to ask you this hypothetically. Okay, let's put it out there. If tomorrow, if Thanos basically Thanos style snap.
Oh yeah, Thanos. Yeah.
All your creation, all your productions, creative works, and everything external that you created, hypothetically again, what would be the lesson that you would carry forward with you from the journey that you had? And what would be the first thing that you would do?
Ooh, first part. And by the way, great question, because if everyone's asking themselves that, that's a good ego death. It's good. That's powerful. So ask yourself that if you're out there watching or listening, and journal about it, because that'll help tremendously. So the first part of the
person, if you know Marvel, by the way.
Yeah. Thanos snaps his fingers, and yeah, I do. Okay, so the first part of the question, what was the lesson? What would be the lesson? The lesson is, when I first found self-improvement, I thought I had found the answer. And I think in some ways I did. I think self-improvement is the answer. Personal responsibility and self-improvement will change your entire life, assuming you learn boundaries and all that kind of stuff. So the problem is, I think self-improvement usually starts from a place of insecurity and scarcity. And it did for me. So, okay, I use this as an example, this little dragonite rock. And let's say this is my essence.
Okay.
What I think most people do in self-improvement is they say, okay, this is who I am, and I'm not really thrilled with who I am right now, and I want to make some changes. So they try to achieve this and become this to achieve it. I think that that's a mistake. Trying to change who you are is different than improving who you already are. So the one lesson with the Thanos snap would be uncover your essence and then grow from that place. Do not try to change your essence, because I'm a engineering mathematical thinker who is structure and discipline and coaching, training, podcasting, priorities, goals, metrics, habits, like I tried to change that and tried to fit in for the longest time. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. I'm never not going to be that way. And I also am unfulfilled when I'm not that way. People say, well, you should take a day off. It's like, no, you're projecting. I am unfulfilled just sitting around. You love sitting around, and that's okay. That's your essence. So stop wanting my goals, and I need to stop wanting your goals, and we need to find a belonging within ourselves and find our tribe and really design a life that's fulfilling for us. Because at the end of the day, when we all face mortality, what's going to matter is whether or not we were fulfilled as human beings. Are you proud of who you are? Are you proud of who you've become? Have you uncovered who you really are? And have you grown that to its true potential? I think that those are the things that we're really gonna care about at the end. Okay, second piece.
Yes.
What's the first thing I would do?
What's the first thing? Yeah, first step you would take.
I would start a podcast called Business Growth University. I'm already doing that. I would start a business podcast.
Yes.
I'm actually about to do that this year.
Okay.
And I know that sounds a little bit like, I always say this to people: when you are truly fulfilled and you reach the place where you're both externally successful and internally fulfilled, which took me until 30 to really get there, because I did the whole I'm unfulfilled and unsuccessful. When I'm 14, I'm a cart kid and a busboy, and I hate my life, and my stepdad left, and we were broke, and I had to figure it out. Then I got externally successful as hell. I made $180,000 a year at one point, investments in a Vanguard account, gonna be a multimillionaire, millionaire mentors, all that. But I was internally unfulfilled. Then I flipped the script, got in a car accident, changed my whole life, went all in on internal fulfillment, but went broke. So now I'm super fulfilled. I have my own company, but I'm broke, so I can't sustain it. But I love who I am: happy, healthy, productive, fitness model, fitness competitor, fitness coach. Then in my 30s, I finally got external successful and internal fulfillment simultaneously, which is the hardest thing in the world, because the work that's most meaningful to us is rarely what the economy pays most for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Sometimes it is, but rarely. I always say, how much would Michael Jordan get paid to play basketball 100 years ago? The answer is $0. There was no NBA. No one got paid to play basketball, right? So what fulfills you, the meaningful work, isn't always what the economy's paying for.
Yeah.
You got to be careful. Turn your passion into purpose, and it'll all work out. If you love what you do, no, absolutely not. Yes and no, okay? The economy pays for specific needed things. Computer engineering pays a lot. The economy needs computer engineers. There's not enough of us. 21st century tech companies got it, but it's not fulfilling for me. I got to reinvent and figure out how to do this. Okay. So to answer your original question, the fulfillment and success thing, I finally got to a place of external success and internal fulfillment. And when you get there, if you can look at yourself in the mirror and authentically say, I just want my future to be an amplified version of what it already is, that's when you know you're there. And now you just have to learn how to scale it. Yes. And that's really freaking challenging too. But ultimately, I think that's the place we're all trying to get to. I think we're all trying to get to a place where we are both externally successful and internally fulfilled. And now all you really care about is dialing that up and growing and contributing for more and more profitability. And then your quality of life rises in tandem with that. And I think that's where most people want to get. But one thing I need to make as clear as possible, because I wish someone told me this, getting to that place, just like the victim, villain, hero guide thing I talked about earlier, is a journey. It takes a lifetime to figure that out. Some people never get there. Statistically speaking, how many people are externally successful and internally fulfilled and just want their future to be an amplified version of what it already is? I mean, that's a 1% of 1% of 1% thing. And if you're fortunate enough to be in that place, you better wake up with gratitude every day, and you also better work your face off to keep it.
Lovely explanation. I mean, you touched on so many great material here that I want to go back to the very beginning of this part that you mentioned, the essence, the true essence of yourself and who you are. Society, upbringing, school, education, depending on even where you are born and when you are growing up, can put a lot of different filters over you, over your essence, over your true self, over who you are. And then before you know it, you're totally a different person. You're not even yourself.
Yeah.
As a true self, way of saying. So somebody becomes awakened and they just start the question of, who am I really? What is my essence? Nothing really fulfills me, or I don't feel the enjoyment in life, or I feel lost. I don't know what to do. What is life? And then they start to find who they really are. How did you find who you really are, what your true essence was?
The reason why I mentioned the Thanos question was really powerful is because that's how you find out who you really are. You ask and answer really challenging questions, and you face mortality. So my dad passed away in a car when he was 28, when I was 2.
Mm-hmm.
I was 26, and I got in a very, very, very life-shattering car accident. Physically, we were okay because we were in a very safe Volkswagen, but it was a head-on collision, and it was not a fender bender. This was bad. Fortunately, the airbags deployed. We were physically okay, definitely rattled, but physically okay. But mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, my dad died in a car at 28. I'm 26 at the time, and that was my ego death.
Yeah.
And so I have these 3 circles of the ego where, picture 3 circles, one inside of each other. The outer circle is who you want others to believe you are. This is your persona. This is your social media. Right? I always say there's the social world and the real world. 2 very different things. There's the wedding and then there's the marriage. Often very different, right? Unfortunately, I want the opposite. I want the best marriage. I don't care about the wedding. Marriage matters. Wedding doesn't. Who cares, right? Again, sorry. Okay. Right, so I want my real life to be better than my fake one.
Yes.
That's the thing. After 26, I flipped that script. If you want to give me if I could give you the real cheat code, that's really what it is. I stopped playing the social game. Now, here's the thing. I'm still in it. If you look at my social media, it's not just me behind my desk working all day. Like, of course, there's branding and marketing and sales, and every company has to portray a certain image. I understand that. Every actor and actress has to too. But if your real life is incredible, then the branding and marketing will come easy because now you're just erring on the high side of reality rather than faking it till you make it. And so that's that piece. But the 3 circles of the ego, the outer circle is who you want others to believe you are. Then the next circle in is who you want to believe you are. This is the story you tell yourself about yourself. Then there's who you really are.
Okay.
When I got in that car accident, all 3 circles collapsed on itself. And my sneaky goal in life that I don't talk about, although I have started to, I want those circles to stay the same. My goal is to keep those 3 circles the same. Who I want you to believe I am needs to be the same as who I want to believe I am, needs to be the same as who I really am. And if you can do that, I'm convinced that you will be fulfilled. You'll also be super rare and no one will like you, but you'll be fulfilled.
So powerful.
I say that tongue in cheek, but it's kind of true, unfortunately.
So powerful. That is what shifted in you when that, did you even notice the shift? Did you consciously make the shift, or something just shifted on its own after that accident?
It's only in hindsight. A lot of this is in hindsight. At the time, here's the thing, it's hard to explain because I don't think in binary, but it's hard not to communicate in binary. So it's duality, which is holding two seemingly opposing ideas in your consciousness simultaneously. And I think women do better at holding duality than men. Men are like, yes or no. It is or it isn't. Yes. It's like, that's obviously not true, right? It's a spectrum and you need to hold multiple things. But anyways, so I'm allowed to make fun of it because I'm also a guy. Okay. It is hilarious. The male ego has got to be the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. It is comical. It is comical to watch. The man with an ego. Gaston in Beauty and the Beast is the perfect epitome of that. But anyways, so what was I saying? Oh, back then I was aware of this happening, but I wasn't as aware as I am now of it. I'm rewatching the movie of my own life over and over and over through contemplation, and then I'm learning how to rearticulate it as a podcaster, coach, and trainer. So what shifted for me is I stopped playing not to lose. Everyone, I think, starts out playing not to lose rather than playing to win.
Wait, say that again. That was beautiful.
Everyone, I think, starts out, well, when we're born, I think we're playing to win because we have nothing to lose. Then society, as you mentioned, starts caking on the stuff. You get friends, peers, caregivers, drama. Some more than others. Holy hell. And then you become this sort of shell of your essence that you have to now, you're playing not to lose. You're playing not to lose friends, or you're playing not to lose face, or you're playing not to lose social status, or you're playing not to be found out, or you're playing, maybe you are smarter and you're afraid to be smarter than, because I learned very early it's not safe to be smarter than. It's not socially safe.